welcome to Diecast Restos for this restoration of a Siku V220 Tempo-Matador-Bus. The castings were in production between 1963 and 1971. This one has been repainted orange over its original khaki colour. A previous owner has covered the entire metal exterior and managed to spread it across the windows, wheels and base. Here is how it should look with its dual headlights. And this is a real Tempo-Matador bus looking remarkably similar to a Type 2 Volkswagen Combi, but more on that shortly. Tempo were founded in 1924 as Vidal & Sohn Tempo-Werke in Hamburg, Germany. They initially built tricycles and then started producing an off-road vehicle in 1936. It was developed with two engines, one for the front and one for the rear axle, making it four-wheel drive. During this time, Tempo also produced cars and, going into the 1940s, built small military vehicles. Post-war, Tempo continued to produce vehicles which were mostly light commercials. The Handseat was a popular three-wheeler delivery van introduced in 1949. Alongside it came the four-wheeled Matador van. The Type 2 Volkswagen, which bore little resemblance to the first incarnation of the Matador, was released around the same time. In fact, the Matador used directly sourced 25 horsepower 1100cc VW engines. 13,521 examples were built using this engine until 1952. They had to return to two-stroke units after failing to secure a long-term agreement with Volkswagen. Four-cylinder Müller engines eventually replaced the VW ones. Then in 1955, a redesigned Matador was unveiled, which was visually very similar to the Type 2 and is what this casting is of course based on. This Matador 1 generation spanned 1955 to 1963. It had a redesign that year, referred to as the Matador E. In 1966, Tempo partnered with locomotive and vehicle manufacturer Hanomag. Matadors were sold under the Hanomag name in 1966, and in their final year of production the following year, they were sold as Hanomag Henschels. In 1971, Hanomag Henschel, including Tempo, were purchased by Daimler-Benz. Tempo continued to produce vans, but none carried the Tempo name, nor had done since 1966. Instead, vehicles were badged as the aforementioned Hanomag and Hanomag Henschel, or Rheinstahl Hanomag or Mercedes-Benz. Production ceased in 1977. Tempo vehicles were licensed for production in other countries. In the UK, Jensen Motors, most famed for the Interceptor, also built Matadors beginning in 1958. These were badged as Jensen Tempo 1500s or Jensen front-wheel drives. In Spain, a company called Tempo Onieva made Tempo Vikings using Barreiros diesel engines. They were later taken over by Barreiros. Both the Matador and Viking were made in Uruguay by Germania Motors. In India, the three-wheeled Tempo Handseat was hugely popular following a marketing campaign there by Tempo. Built under license by Bajaj Tempo as the Bajaj Tempo Handseat, they remained in production from 1962 until 2000. The company is now a multinational known as Force Motors. And in Australia, Matador driveshafts and suspension made up the Jolas Minx single-seater racing car. As for the casting, it began life in khaki green in 1963, the same year the real vehicle received an update. It came with either a grey or green plastic interior. These lasted until 1969. In 1966, a cream to off-white model came along. These had red interiors, but also had a plastic canoe fitted to the roof. These canoes came in a variety of colours. These also continued on beyond the original green type until 1971 and actually had a different code. Instead of V220, these were V264. Anyway, now let's talk about my casting a little bit. All of that orange paint that had stained the windows and wheels has now been eradicated with a wash following a session in the Dettol antiseptic liquid bath. Earlier, some Autosol metal polish had removed any coverage, plus shined up the rather dull looking base and incorporated features. The window piece now receives a similar treatment using Polywatch scratch remover. Thankfully, this example isn't peppered with gouges or scratches, but this will certainly help improve its overall appearance. Once the last residue of Polywatch has been thoroughly rubbed in, I turn to Astonish wood floor polish for the final shiny coating. Final prep for the wheels includes a dab of Molotow chrome on the discoloured axle ends. Now later than usual in my production comes today's primer and paint application. Here you'll be able to appreciate the little details this casting possesses. The flat-sided bus doesn't have a wealth of areas that have cast detailing unfortunately, but the best is reserved for the front. You might be able to make out the Tempo logo and Matador wording. Speaking in hindsight, well after the event, I think I could have used a lighter paint for the body. I had decided early on to try this Tamiya AS14 USAF Olive, which is an aircraft paint. The lid suggested the colour may be lighter than it turned out, but the paint was effectively a freebie with some primer, so it was worth trying out. It's just a few shades darker than I expected, that's all. But the final touch for the body is applying these dual headlights that I picked up on eBay. These have an adhesive backing, so simply stick on wherever they are placed. Perhaps a little larger than the original models might have been, I still think they look great and finish this build off perfectly. With both in place, here's a brief look at it. Okay, now to reassemble the casting. The wheels are already sat within the base, but I'm yet to drop in the suspension rods. After the transparency is lowered in, the door can be balanced, where it is then held in place by the plastic interior piece. Now I can lay down those rods. It's all very loose still at this stage, so it's gently eased together at an awkward angle. The base and body connect by a rear-facing tongue and slot fitment, while the front clips to those shallow, narrow rivet posts. This is how our Siku V220 Tempo-Matador-Bus looked initially. A prior owner had gone to town on it with orange paint. They hadn't missed an inch of the body, but expectedly hit the windows, wheels and grille and bumper, which form part of the base. A quirky casting, and one which I'd certainly never come across before. I hope this has been a bit of an education for some. It definitely has been for me. So here it is now. As I said earlier during paint application, it is a little darker than I'd have wanted, but that by no means suggests it doesn't suit it. The grille and bumper portion of the base have polished up superbly, as has the window piece, now showing no remnants of orange paint. Likewise the wheels, which have been coated in Citadel Gloss Nuln Oil. I also had to manipulate some of these high windows, which had been bent inward a little without damaging the transparency seemingly. And those dual headlights finished the build off nicely, bulging from that very VW looking front end. Well, if you've enjoyed this build, do leave a like, a comment and do subscribe. Thanks to all you subscribers and channel supporters, it is much appreciated. Links to join them are at the end of the video and in the description below. But all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.